Okay, so the Americans. When you think of America, there's a very famous quote from Oscar Wilde, who is a English playwright, novelist, humorist. And he said, America is the only country that went from barbarism to decadence, without civilization in between. Okay, so he meant this as a joke. So what did he mean by this? This is a question we will discuss today. And what I will show you is that America, in many ways, it was designed as the anti-civilization. The founding fathers of America recognized the failings and problems of civilization and designed a new form of government based on Enlightenment principles in order to redeem humanity from the prejudices, the atrocities of civilization. Okay? So that's the argument we will look at today. To understand this, we have to read another book called Democracy in America by a Frenchman named Alexis de Tocqueville. This is the most famous book ever written about America. Okay, not by an American, but by a Frenchman who visited America for maybe 8 months. In 1835, he publishes Democracy in America. And he's trying to explain why is it that American democracy works, and why is it destined to eventually conquer the world. All right. Now, there's a lot of debate about this book. Hopefully, you'll be able to read this book in college. It is a fantastic book. It's really one of the best books ever written. And it's 1,000 pages. So it's possible for you to interpret the book in many different ways. But what I want to show you today is Alexis de Tocqueville actually is skeptical about American democracy. He is actually afraid of what the spreading of American liberty will mean for the world. Okay? So the argument I will show you is America is really the first mass democratic middle-class country. Okay? But because of that, the people there are selfish, conformist, and unimaginative. And he fears that as America conquers the world will become atomized, uniform, and mediocre. Atomized just means that we live in our own little bubble. We don't really care about larger issues than ourselves. Uniform means everyone thinks the same way, and mediocre means that, well, no one's striving for greatness anymore. If you think about it, okay, the world we live in today, in the year 2025, this is the world we live in. It's a atomized, uniform, and mediocre world. So how did this happen? How was it possible for the world to become like this? And for you to understand this, it's important to go back to the Dutch Republic. We discussed the Dutch Republic last week and talk about what it means to be middle class. Now, as I said last week, the middle class is distinct because it creates anxiety, uncertainty, and competition within the lives of individuals. Okay? The anxiety comes from the fact that your situation is never stable. You can be rich tomorrow, but you can be poor the next day. This is different from history where if you're born poor, you stay poor. If you're a noble person, you could have no money, but your status stays with you. Okay? And it passes on to your children and your grandchildren. Okay? So there's a certainty in that world. But in this world, if you're middle class, you could be a factory owner, you could be Jack Ma, and then the next day you get unlucky and you lose all your money. Okay? And you're back to being a poor person. This creates anxiety and uncertainty. Also, because status is not given, but it must be earned, there's competition among middle-class members to strive for status, okay? And this creates something we call OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and it leads to an obsessive control of yourself, a focus on cleanliness, and a desire to accumulate and achieve, okay? And if you think about it, we discussed the memoir of Benjamin Franklin, right? Well, why is he focused on such a simple living? Why is he focused on earning so much money? Why does he constantly want to achieve? It's because of the anxiety of being middle class. You're born poor, you earn a lot of money, you become wealthy, but how do you know you won't become poor? How do you know your children won't become poor? The only way to resolve this anxiety is by constantly accumulating more and more. Okay? All right. So let's look at democracy in America. Okay, let's look at certain passages let's look at certain passages from Democracy in America to understand the thinking of de Tocqueville. All right. Such a democratic society would be less brilliant than the aristocracy, but also less plagued by misery. Pleasures would be less extreme, prosperity more general, knowledge would be less exalted, but ignorance more rare. Feelings would be less passionate and habits milder. There would be more vices and fewer crimes. Okay, this is actually a hard passage to understand. So what he's saying is this. In aristocratic societies, in most societies, there's a huge gap between the rich and the poor, okay? And there's a huge gap between the great and the mediocre. What democratic societies do is they take this system and they turn it into this system, okay? So the middle class, they're not that great, but they're not that poor either, okay? They're not as talented, but they're not as mediocre, okay? So you've taken this system, right? And you turn it into this system. And that's a theory of democracy. And in theory, this sounds better, okay? If you're just born randomly into a democratic society, you're much more likely to live a happy life than if you were born into an aristocratic society, okay? So that's a theory. But de Tocqueville spent a lot of time looking at America, and he decided that's not what happened, okay? It's not that you went from this to this. It's like you went from this to like this, okay? All right, so he explains. But what have we done? In rejecting the social state of our ancestors and casting aside their institutions, ideas, and mores, what have we put in their place? So what he's saying is the American Revolution was about destroying tradition, about destroying civilization, but they failed to build new traditions and new civilization. The prestige of royal power has evaporated, but the majesty of the law has failed to take its place. Okay, this is key. Before, we worship a man, a king, and the king made us obedient to his law. We got rid of the king, and we said, well, let's keep the law. The problem is this. The problem is people respect and revere those who are superior to them. They do not respect and revere ideas and things and laws. Does that make sense? Okay? So in theory, America is a rule of law nation, but people don't really understand these laws, and people don't revere these laws as much as they would a superior man. It strikes me that we have destroyed those individuals who once had the wherewithal to battle tyranny on their own. So in a aristocratic system, what will happen is you have these great individuals like Robespierre emerge to challenge the system. And he feels, and he's supported by others because others see the injustice of the system. But in democracy, what happens is great individuals are oppressed by the conformity, the tyranny of the majority. Okay, does that make sense? Right? If everyone's happy, then you say, but if you come out and you say, listen, this system is wrong, people will shut you down. Right? In an aristocracy, everyone knows what's unjust. So if you come out and you speak what's unjust, people will follow you. But in a democracy, in a middle-class society, which is conformist, you're not allowed to question popular opinion. And therefore, no great man can arise. If you think about it, in American history, there aren't that many great individuals. Okay? It's a great country. It's very wealthy. But think about how many great individuals who have arisen. What's also unique about America is the people they worship are not generals, not leaders, but business people. Henry Ford, Elon Musk, Thomas Edison, right? These are all business people. That's who they worship. The poor man, for the most part, clings to his forebears' prejudices without their faith and to their ignorance without their virtues. Okay, so the Catholic Church was problematic. Medieval Europe was problematic. But at least people knew how to live a good life. Now, if you're a poor person, you're completely lost in the system. Okay, you're expected to have your own virtues. You're expected to discover your own purpose in life. But if you don't, then you're alienated. Okay? And this creates a huge problem that we'll discuss later on. All right, he continues. I see men who, in the name of progress, seek to reduce men to material being. This is the ultimate problem in America. Before, in civilization, you were asked to die for your nation. Now, you're asked to go make money and buy things. Okay? Materialism. They look for what is useful without concern for what is just. They seek science removed from faith and prosperity apart from virtue. Having styled themselves champions of modern civilization, they have arrogantly placed themselves at its head, usurping a position abandoned by others which they are quite unworthy of occupying themselves. Okay, so in this system, the worst rise to power. The best are trampled down by conformity. All right? All right, he continues. I'm trying to imagine what new features despotism might have in today's world. I see an innumerable host of men, all alike and equal, endlessly hastening after petty and vulgar pleasures with which they fill their souls. Over these men stand an immense tutelary power which assumes sole responsibility for securing their pleasures and watching over their fate. Think about the society that we live in today, the entire world. Before, we were asked to sacrifice ourselves for our civilization. Before, we were asked to be great, to work together. Now, we're asked to just buy things. Buying things will make us happy. And it's the responsibility of the government to ensure we can buy things. Okay? That's the world we live in today. It's impossible to believe that a liberal, energetic, and wise government can ever emerge from the bowels of a nation of servants. If you're a consumer, if all your concern is buying things, you are just a slave. The possibility of a constitution being republican in its head and ultra-monarchical in all of its other parts has always struck me as an ethereal monster. Okay, we think we live in a democracy. We think the government listens to us, but it's really the imperial bureaucracy that's in charge. And that's a monster. The vice of those who govern and the imbecility of the governed would quickly bring about its ruin, and the people, tired of their representatives and of themselves, would either create free institutions or soon return to prostrating themselves at the feet of a single master. Okay, so this is a prophecy. The prophecy is this. America, the way it is structured, the way it is conceived, is not sustainable in the long term. Either it will break apart in a civil war, or a tyrant will emerge. It will become a monarchy. Okay, that is de Tocqueville's dark prophecy for America. Okay, so America is again in competition with these other civilizations. But there's certain problems with civilization that emerges over time. The first, of course, is the idea of prejudice. You just believe that your civilization is superior to that of other civilizations. Okay, everyone believes this. My civilization is better, and my civilization is superior to yours. So this is prejudice. It leads to war, violence. It leads to lack of innovation, openness, right? It's a stubbornness, inflexibility. It also limits immigration. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? This is the nature of civilization throughout most of human history. Now, this is a problem for America. Why? Because as I mentioned, America was founded by immigrants. Right? It's also pretty diverse. Diversity, openness. And so these are the three characteristics of America. It's a very diverse place with different religions, different cultures. It's always trying to welcome immigrants in order to build up its nation and wealth. And it has to be open because it needs to steal ideas from Europe, basically. All right? So now you have a problem. Right? Civilization cannot solve these problems. So what do you do in order to create a society? What you do is, rather than build a civilization, you create a game. Okay? In many ways, America is an anti-civilization. It's trying to remedy the failings and weaknesses of civilizations in the past. It's decided, we're going to create a game, guys. Okay? That's the idea of the U.S. Constitution. What's the game? The game is this. First of all, we need to have game masters. Game masters is the government. But the problem is, for the game to work, it has to be fair. It has to be clean. Okay? It has to be winnable for people. Does that make sense? You only play games if you think the game is fair and it's winnable and it's rewarding, right? It's transparent. Therefore, our government must be fair, transparent, and democratic to get as many people to play this game as possible. All right? Once the government is in place, now what we do is we create the rules for the game that are fair, just, and which is winnable, okay? So the purpose of this game is to make as much money as possible, okay? Material acquisition. If you win this money, it's yours, okay? Private property. By law, whatever you earn, whatever you have earned, is yours forever. It's yours, but it's also your children's, okay? You understand? This is a game that America has constructed. If you think about it, this is great because now you can bring in as many immigrants as you want. Because all they do is play this game. Everyone wants to play this game. It allows you to be open because it allows for rapid innovation within your society. Okay? And it allows for diversity as well because everyone's striving to make as much money as possible. Okay? So that's what America is. America sees itself as a new civilization, but it's really an anti-civilization because it's really a game. And over time, what will happen is, because America is becoming more and more wealthy, it will be able to conquer the world and establish the game throughout the world. In China today, we are playing this game, right? What do we believe? We believe that we come to school because we need to get an education, go to America, get a degree, so that we can become rich. When we become rich, we can buy things, right? We're playing this game. We've all been brainwashed to play this game. Okay? The problem with this game is, eventually, the few will win everything. Does that make sense? You have massive inequality in the world. And when this happens, people are like, this game sucks. What do we do now? And then people will be like, you know what? I miss civilization. I miss when it was clear what my identity was, when it was clear what I had to do in life, when I was asked to make sacrifices for the greater good. I miss that. I'm nostalgic for that, okay? And of course, this is what gives us MAGA. All right? Ultimately, MAGA is about trying to restore the idea of civilization in America. Make America great again. Make America into a white, Christian, democratic nation again. Let us restore the vision of Thomas Jefferson. Right?